Hey everybody, Tim Ulbrich here, and welcome to this week's segment of the Rx Money Roundup on the YFP podcast, where we give you our take on relevant financial news and updates, answer your questions, and break down examples of financial planning in action. Today, I'll be talking about the point in time when your savings will be out earning your six-figure income. Say what? Yes, that's right. If we're doing this right and taking advantage of the time value of money, we should all get to a point where our savings outperform our annual income. But before we get into this, let me give a shout out to our financial planning and tax professionals at YFP that make this segment possible. At YFP, we support pharmacists at every stage of their careers to take control of their finances, reach their financial goals, and build wealth through comprehensive fee-only financial planning and tax planning. You can learn more and book a free discovery call by visiting yourfinancialpharmacist.com. Okay, this week we're talking about when your savings will be out earning your pharmacist income. And while that concept alone is pretty cool, the better part is that it becomes passive and it becomes exponential. It can scale, right? Neither of which we can say is true about our work and our work income. So what is the number where our savings will out earn our income? Is it 1 million? Is it 2 million? Is it 3 million? Well, here's what it is. $2.3 million. $2.3 million is the point at which your savings will start to out earn your income as a pharmacist. If we assume a 6% rate of return on your savings of $2.3 million, that would yield $138,000 a year for the first year. Hopefully it goes up, which exceeds the median pay of a pharmacist as reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is $136,030 per year or $65.40 per hour. Pretty cool, right? So at that point, at $2.3 million, your passive income from savings will out earn your active work. That's the power of compound interest. So how long does it take to build up $2.3 million in savings? It depends. Is $2.3 million enough for your situation? It depends. If we use the 4% rule for safe withdrawal, a portfolio of $2.3 million would yield $92,000 per year, adjusted up for inflation over time. Now, if you're looking for something more conservative, a 3% withdrawal rate on a $2.3 million portfolio would yield $69,000 per year. So is that enough, right? It depends. Every situation is different. Now, of course, whether those are pre or post-tax dollars matters a lot. And that's why you can have two people with the same amount of savings, but depending on what buckets that money is in, pre-tax, post-tax, et cetera, you can have and yield very different results, right? Not all savings buckets are created equal. We've talked about that many times on the show. Regardless, here are a few different pathways to saving $2.3 million. All of these assume a 6% rate of return. Now, we know the markets don't work in a clean annual rate of return like that, but for the sake of calculations and illustration purposes only, let's roll with it. So here are a few different pathways to $2.3 million in savings, all that assume a 6% rate of return. Pathway number one is you could save $650 per month over 50 years to get to 2.3 million. And that would equal $384,000 in total contributions. What does that mean? That means that $384,000 would be your contributions, and the rest to get to 2.3 million would all be accumulation and interest during that savings time period. So that's scenario one, $650 per month over 50 years. Scenario two is $1,200 per month over 40 years. Now, shorter timeline, right, which makes sense, higher contribution rate per month. These are approximate numbers. That would equal $576,000 in total contributions. So that's scenario two. Scenario three is $2,350 per month over 30 years. Okay, $2,350 per month over 30 years. That would require $846,000 in total contribution. Makes sense. Shorter time period, more work that we have to do. Scenario 4 is $5,100 per month, $5,100 per month over 20 years, or $1.224 million in total contributions. Now we're getting to more than half, just about half, is your contributions. The rest is accumulation and growth. Very different than scenario 1, where the vast majority of it was from the growth because we had a longer time period. And finally, our 5th scenario is saving $14,000 per month. That's a lot over 10 years. And in this case, a majority, 1.68 million, is in your contributions, with a minority in interest and accumulation during that time period. So those were 5 scenarios of how we get to 2.3 million. Scenario 1, just to give you the opposites here. Scenario 1 was $650 per month over 50 years, right? Pretty reasonable monthly savings rate. Scenario 5 was $14,000 per month over 10 years, much higher savings rate. Now, a few things stand out here when I look at these calculations, right? First, let's get it out of the way. Simple calculations like this don't do justice for the complexities that are associated with determining how much you need to be saving for retirement. A lot of factors that go into that. This is a fun exercise. It's a good starting exercise, but it's really nothing more than that. Okay. Second, time is a very bold highlight, underline, right? Time is a very significant variable for savings. A more compressed savings timeline, whether that be because of an early retirement or a delayed savings, requires a much higher savings rate to catch up. We know that. We all know that, but the math here really supports that in a compelling way. And third, the longer the timeline of savings, right? 50 years versus 10 years, the longer the timeline we have to save, the more the rate of return matters. The shorter the timeline, and thus the greater the contribution rate, the less the rate of return matters. Okay. So the longer the timeline of saving, the more the rate of return matters. The shorter the timeline, and thus the greater the contribution rate, the greater the savings rate, the less the rate of return matters. So when it comes to investing, right, we talk about that often on the show. I think we can run the risk of overcomplicating investment selection at the expense of losing sight of how significant time is as a variable and savings rate is as a variable. I often say that, hey, if we're saving a significant percentage of our income over a long period of time, that's step 1. Step 2, now we can really start to get into asset allocation and all of the important decisions that come along with that. But if we're getting in the weeds on investment allocation and picking this investment over that investment, and we're not saving a significant percentage over a long period of time, we're kind of missing the point and the variables that are going to have the greatest impact. So there you have it. That's the point at which your savings have the potential to out-earn your 6-figure income. We appreciate you listening to this week's episode of the Rx Money Roundup segment of the podcast. If you have a question or a topic that you would like us to cover on an upcoming episode, send us an email at info@yourfinancialpharmacist.com, or you can record that question or suggest a topic of interest by visiting yourfinancialpharmacist.com/ask. As we wrap up this week's episode, an important reminder that the content is provided for informational purposes only, is not intended to provide, and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in the podcast and any corresponding materials should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial product. For more information on this, you can visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thanks so much for listening and for your support of the podcast. Have a great rest of your week.